Chosen one, listen closely. This moment is not random, and this video did not reach you by accident. Something has shifted behind the scenes, and the people who once doubted you can feel it now. They questioned your silence, your past, your strength, even the people you once trusted. But today, the truth is turning the tables. What they tried to uncover has begun to expose them. You were being watched, tested, and underestimated. But all of it was preparing you for this exact point in time. While they thought you were falling behind, something powerful was building within you. There were nights you felt unseen, moments when you wondered if anyone truly understood your journey. But every delay, every tear, every closed door had a purpose. What's unfolding now is not loud, it's precise. And that precision is what's making them nervous. They're starting to realize that you didn't lose anything. You gained clarity. You didn't break. You aligned. And now, the same people who questioned your worth are quietly panicking because the answers they were looking for are leading back to you. This isn't about revenge, status, or proving anyone wrong. This is about elevation. When fear leaves your spirit and confidence replaces doubt. You don't need to announce your growth. The shift is already speaking for you. Pay attention, because what you're about to hear will connect the dots, explain the silence, and reveal why this phase feels so different. Stay with me till the end, because this message is timed. And once you understand it, you'll never see your past the same way again. Before we go deeper into this revelation, take a moment to align yourself. Like the video. Leave a comment saying, "Thank you, God, for choosing me," and subscribe to the channel to send your signal to the universe and stay connected to messages meant for you. They started asking questions when your silence became loud. At first, they didn't notice you at all. You were still there, still moving, still trying, but because you weren't loud about it, they assumed nothing special was happening. Your progress was quiet, and in a world that only pays attention to noise, quiet growth often gets ignored. People thought you were stuck, or maybe just drifting through life. They felt comfortable believing that because it required no effort from them. As long as you stayed silent and small in their minds, everything felt predictable. But something changed the moment you stopped explaining yourself. You didn't announce your plans anymore. You didn't justify your choices or defend your past. You simply moved forward. That's when your silence started to feel different. It wasn't empty anymore. It had weight. People could sense that something was happening even if they couldn't see it clearly. And when people don't understand a change, curiosity naturally takes over. That curiosity pushed them to ask questions, not directly to you, but to others. They started reaching out to people who once knew you, hoping to find answers. They wanted to hear old stories, old labels, old versions of you that made sense to them. They were trying to confirm that you were still the same person they thought they understood. But what they found didn't match their expectations. The answers confused them. Some people spoke about your growth. Others mentioned your calm, your discipline, or how you no longer reacted to things that once bothered you. Instead of finding weakness, they found consistency. Instead of drama, they found maturity. That's when uneasiness began to settle in. Because when the past can't explain the present, people start feeling uncomfortable. What they didn't realize is that silence was doing work behind the scenes. You weren't quiet because you had nothing to say. You were quiet because you were building something real. Strength doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it forms slowly, away from attention, away from opinions. And while they were talking, you were becoming. The moment you stopped defending your story, everything flipped. When you no longer feel the need to explain yourself, it sends a powerful message. It shows confidence. It shows self-trust. And most importantly, it shows that you're no longer seeking approval. That shift alone makes people nervous, because it means they can't influence you the way they once did. Fear didn't come from anything you said or did openly. It came from what they could no longer access. They couldn't read you, they couldn't predict you, and they couldn't control the narrative anymore. Your silence forced them to look closer, and what they saw didn't give them comfort. It gave them questions. And that's how fear quietly enters the mind. Not through noise, but through a calm they can't explain. The people you outgrew became your unintentional witnesses. Everyone you once knew still remembers a version of you. It could be an old habit, an old mistake, an old phase when you were still learning who you were. People tend to hold on to those memories because they help them feel familiar and comfortable. For a long time, those old versions worked in their favor. As long as you stayed the same, they felt sure about where you stood and how to define you. But growth doesn't ask for permission. Slowly, without any announcement, you began to change. Your mindset shifted. Your priorities matured. You stopped repeating the same patterns. And that's when confusion started spreading. Quietly, but deeply. The version of you in their memory no longer matched the person you were becoming in real life. When people sense that kind of mismatch, they start talking. They reach out to others from your past, not out of care, but out of curiosity. They compare stories, hoping someone will confirm what they already believe. They expect to hear the same old descriptions, the same flaws, the same doubts that once defined you. They want reassurance that you haven't really changed, but the conversations don't go the way they expect. Instead of hearing negativity, they hear balance. Instead of hearing chaos, they hear growth. People describe you as more focused, more grounded, more self-aware. Even those who knew your past struggles speak about how far you've come. That's when uneasiness turns into panic, because your past was supposed to be the evidence against you. It was supposed to keep you small in their minds. When that evidence no longer works, the story they built starts falling apart. They can't use old labels anymore. They can't rely on outdated opinions, and suddenly they're left without control over how you're seen. What makes it stronger is that you didn't go back to explain yourself. You didn't rewrite history or defend your growth. You simply let consistency speak. Day after day, your behavior stayed aligned. Your words matched your actions. You didn't switch masks depending on who was watching. That steady way of being became your quiet proof. At some point, they realized something uncomfortable. The people you outgrew are now witnessing your evolution without meaning to. Your growth is being confirmed in rooms you're not even in. Conversations you never joined are now working in your favor. And that's unsettling to those who hoped your past would always define you. When even the people who knew you before can't discredit you anymore, the narrative collapses on its own. No argument, no confrontation, just truth standing firm. And that's when panic sets in. Not because you did something wrong, but because you did something right and never needed permission to do it. Your discipline exposed what excuses never could. You didn't try to prove anyone wrong. You didn't get into arguments or waste energy explaining your choices. While others talked, complained, or waited for motivation, you quietly chose discipline. Not the loud, showy kind, but the daily kind that no one sees. That decision alone separated you from the crowd. Discipline doesn't look impressive at first, but over time, it reveals everything excuses try to hide. People around you took a different route. When things got hard, they blamed timing, luck, or other people. When progress felt slow, they looked for shortcuts. Some jumped from one idea to another, hoping something would finally work without real effort. Watching all this, you stayed focused. You kept showing up, even on days when motivation was missing. That steady behavior didn't make noise, but it built strength. Over time, they began to notice the difference. While others were burning out, starting over, or giving up, you remained grounded. Not because life was easier for you, but because you had trained yourself to stay consistent. You didn't panic under pressure. You didn't collapse when plans changed. That calm, unsettled people. Chaos usually expects company, and when you don't join it, questions start forming. They wondered how you stayed steady when situations were unstable, how you didn't react emotionally to every problem, how you kept moving forward without needing constant reassurance. What they were really seeing was the result of discipline, clear thinking, emotional control, and patience built over time. Those qualities can't be copied overnight, and that's what made them uncomfortable. The truth slowly became impossible to ignore. Your progress didn't come from talent alone or lucky timing. It came from choices made repeatedly, even when no one was watching. And that realization was scary for people who relied on excuses. Because if discipline works, then the reasons they used to stay stuck no longer hold weight. Excuses feel safe because they protect the ego. Discipline does the opposite. It demands honesty. It forces you to admit when effort is missing. When people saw how far you had come without drama or shortcuts, it quietly exposed what was lacking in their own approach. That kind of exposure doesn't need words. It speaks for itself. You never had to point fingers or compare yourself. Your consistency did that for you. Every calm response, every completed task, every moment you chose structure over comfort became evidence. And that evidence proved something uncomfortable. The problem was never lack of opportunity or support. It was lack of commitment. That's why your discipline unsettled them. It removed all excuses from the room. And when excuses disappear, people are left facing their own choices. And that truth is far more intimidating than any argument could ever be. They realized your delay was never denial. For a long time, people believed you were behind. They looked at your timeline, compared it with others, and quietly decided that life had passed you by. Because your success wasn't visible yet, they assumed it wasn't coming. Some even felt comfortable writing you off, thinking there was plenty of time to doubt you, question you, or ignore your potential. From the outside, it looked like nothing was happening. What they didn't see was the work being done in the background. Delays weren't stopping you. They were shaping you. While attention was elsewhere, you were learning patience, self-control, and clarity. You were building skills, strengthening your mindset, and understanding what really mattered. Growth like that doesn't rush, and it doesn't ask for applause. It happens quietly, often when no one is watching. During that time, you didn't complain or demand recognition. You accepted the slow pace and used it wisely. Every pause taught you something. Every setback forced you to refine your direction. Instead of becoming bitter, you became prepared. Instead of rushing forward half-ready, you allowed yourself to mature fully. That's something people rarely notice until it's too late. When movement finally began, it didn't look like a beginning. It looked like momentum. Suddenly, things lined up. Decisions became clearer. Opportunities appeared naturally. And that's when people realized their mistake. You weren't late. You were right on time. You weren't starting from zero. You were stepping forward with experience and understanding already in place. By the time they noticed, there was nothing left for them to interfere with. The phase where opinions could slow you down had already passed. You had crossed the point of needing permission. That realization unsettled them. They thought they had more time to doubt you, more time to question your path. But your arrival came sooner than expected. What makes this realization so uncomfortable is that it challenges their assumptions. They believed progress had a deadline, and you had missed it. But your journey proved that timing is personal. Life doesn't move by comparison. It moves by readiness. And you became ready in silence. Now, they see that the delay protected you. It kept you away from distractions. It kept you grounded. It gave you the strength to move forward without fear. And that's terrifying to people who rely on visible markers to judge worth. Because your growth broke their timeline, their expectations, and their confidence in doubting you. Your consistency made their curiosity turn into fear. At first, people were just curious. They noticed small changes in you, but they assumed it was temporary. Most changes are. Anyone can feel motivated for a few days, talk differently for a week, or act focused for a short time. People have seen that pattern before, so they didn't take your growth seriously. They expected you to slip back into old habits like everyone else, but you didn't. And that's when curiosity started turning into something else. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. You kept showing the same level of discipline, the same calm energy, the same direction. No dramatic announcements, no emotional highs and lows, just steady movement forward. That's what unsettled them, because temporary change feels safe. Consistency does not. They began to notice that your growth wasn't based on mood or emotion. You didn't improve only when things felt good. You stayed aligned even when no one was encouraging you, praising you, or paying attention. That kind of change runs deeper than motivation. It's structural. It means something inside you has shifted permanently. Your habits told the story first. You stopped wasting energy on things that didn't matter. You chose routines that supported your peace and progress. You didn't need reminders to stay focused. You built systems that kept you grounded. That alone made people uncomfortable, because systems don't collapse easily. Then they noticed your reactions. Situations that once triggered you no longer did. You didn't argue to feel heard. You didn't react to provoke a response. You stayed calm where others expected emotion. That calm wasn't empty. It was controlled. And control like that makes people nervous because it removes unpredictability. Your standards changed too. You didn't accept the same treatment. You didn't entertain the same conversations. You became selective with your time, your energy, and your attention. That shift quietly communicated self-respect. And self-respect, when consistent, is intimidating to those who rely on access to feel powerful. Fear didn't come because you suddenly succeeded. Sudden success can be dismissed as luck. Fear came because your alignment couldn't be ignored. Day after day, you stayed the same person, focused, steady, grounded. That consistency proved this wasn't a phase, it was a foundation. People fear what they can't interrupt, and by staying consistent when no one was watching, you became unstoppable. Your growth no longer depended on circumstances or approval. It moved forward on its own. That's when curiosity ended, and fear quietly took its place. You no longer reacted, and that removed their control. For a long time, People knew exactly how to get a response from you. A word, a tone, a situation. And they could predict how you would react. That predictability gave them comfort, and in some cases, control. When someone can pull an emotional response from you, they feel powerful, even if they never admit it. Your reactions became a way for others to stay connected to you, influence you, or even disturb your peace. Then something changed. You stopped reacting the way you used to. It didn't happen overnight, and it didn't come from anger. It came from awareness. You realized that not every comment deserves an answer, and not every situation requires your energy. Instead of responding immediately, you paused. Instead of defending yourself, you observed. That pause alone shifted the entire dynamic. The moment you stopped reacting, emotional access disappeared. People could no longer pull energy from you whenever they wanted. Your calm created distance, not physical distance, but emotional boundaries. Without reactions, there was no exchange, no spark, no fuel. And without fuel, control weakens. At first, they tested you. They tried old triggers, old patterns, familiar pressure points. They expected the same emotional response as before, but you stayed composed. You didn't argue, you didn't explain, you didn't escalate. That's when confusion started setting in. Because when patterns stop working, people begin to worry. Your calm wasn't passive. It was intentional. You chose peace over proving a point. You chose clarity over chaos. And that choice made others uncomfortable because it meant they could no longer steer the interaction. Control depends on reaction. When reaction disappears, influence fades. Questions soon turned into concern. People started wondering why their words no longer affected you, why their presence didn't shake you, why situations that once caused emotional waves now barely moved you. What they were witnessing was composure, a state where emotions are managed, not suppressed. Composure changes power dynamics quietly. There's no confrontation, no argument, just a shift in balance. When you remain calm, others are forced to face their own emotions instead of projecting them onto you, and that can feel threatening. You didn't become cold or distant. You became centered. And being centered means you decide where your energy goes. That decision alone removes leverage from anyone who depended on your reactions. Your calm became your boundary. Your silence became your strength. And without you doing anything loud or aggressive, the power quietly returned to where it always belonged, with you. They sensed protection around you they couldn't explain. People started noticing things they couldn't logically explain. It wasn't something you announced or showed off, but they could feel it. Situations that should have gone wrong somehow worked in your favor. Problems that usually create stress didn't shake you the same way. There was a sense that something was guiding your steps, even when the path didn't seem clear on the surface. At first, they tried to explain it with logic. Maybe it was luck, maybe it was timing, maybe it was coincidence, but the pattern kept repeating. Doors opened for you quietly. Opportunities showed up without struggle or competition. You didn't force your way into spaces, you were simply allowed in. And that consistency made logic fall short. They noticed how things aligned around you without chaos. While others had to fight, push, or compromise themselves, you moved forward with less resistance. Not because you were avoiding effort, but because things met you halfway. That kind of flow makes people uncomfortable, especially those who believe everything must be earned through pressure and conflict. What stood out most was your peace. Even under pressure, you didn't panic. Even when uncertainty was present, you stayed steady. That calm didn't come from having all the answers. It came from trust. And trust creates a kind of protection that can't be measured or seen. People sense when someone is protected, not in a dramatic way, but in the way setbacks don't fully touch them, in the way negativity doesn't stick, in the way they recover faster, think clearer, and move forward stronger. They saw that when something tried to block you, it didn't last. When something tried to pull you down, it lost momentum. That's when fear deepened, because opposition relies on confidence. When people feel they can influence outcomes, they act boldly. But when they sense something unseen supporting you, their certainty weakens, doubt creeps in, hesitation replaces action. They couldn't challenge what they couldn't understand. There was no obvious reason for your protection, no rule they could point to, no formula they could copy. And that made them uneasy, because logic gives control, and mystery removes it. You didn't claim favor. You didn't demand recognition. You simply walked in alignment. And alignment attracts timing, protection, and opportunity naturally. That's what they were witnessing. Not luck, not coincidence, but a flow that comes from being in the right place internally. When something unseen protects you, opposition loses confidence, attacks lose direction, doubt replaces certainty, and without you saying a word, fear settles in. Not because you became dangerous, but because you became untouchable in ways they can't explain. Your clarity exposed their confusion. For a long time, everyone around you was still trying to figure things out. People changed plans often, jumped between ideas, and questioned their own choices. Confusion became normal. In the middle of all that noise, you did something different. You became clear. You didn't make a big announcement. You didn't try to convince anyone. You simply knew what you were doing and why you were doing it. That clarity didn't come from having all the answers. It came from self-honesty. You spent time understanding what mattered to you and what didn't. You stopped chasing things just because others were chasing them. Slowly, your direction became solid. And when someone has direction, it shows, even without words. What unsettled people was how quiet your clarity was. You weren't trying to stand out. You weren't explaining every step. You just moved with intention. Your decisions matched your values. Your actions followed a purpose. That kind of focus is intimidating to people who are still lost, because it reflects back their uncertainty. You also stopped needing approval. You didn't look around for validation before taking a step. You trusted yourself. That trust removed hesitation. And when hesitation disappears, movement becomes clean and confident. People noticed that you weren't easily influenced anymore. Opinions didn't pull you off course. Trends didn't distract you. Trying to understand this change, they started asking questions, not to you, but to others around you. They hoped someone would mention doubt, confusion, or uncertainty in your plans. They wanted to hear that you were still unsure, like everyone else. But that's not what they found. Instead, people spoke about your certainty. They mentioned how you stayed consistent in your decisions, how you didn't second-guess yourself publicly, how you followed through. That consistency made it clear that your direction wasn't accidental. It was chosen. That's when fear turned inward, because clarity exposes confusion without saying a word. When someone stands firmly in their direction, it highlights how unsure others feel inside. Your calm confidence didn't attack anyone, but it forced comparison. And comparison can be uncomfortable when answers are missing. You didn't judge anyone for being unsure. You simply kept moving. But your movement alone showed that clarity is possible. That realization can feel threatening to people who are still searching because it removes excuses. It doesn't need to argue. It doesn't need approval. It simply exists. And in doing so, it reveals the confusion others are still trying to hide. They're terrified because you didn't need revenge to rise. This is the part no one saw coming. People expected you to react with anger. They thought you would try to get even, prove a point, or expose those who hurt you. That's how most stories go. Pain usually demands a response, but you chose a different path. You didn't fight back. You didn't waste energy planning revenge. You focused on rising instead. That choice alone confused people. They assumed strength comes from confrontation. They believed power looks loud, aggressive, and dramatic, but you showed them something else. You showed that growth can be quiet, that healing can be stronger than anger, and that elevation doesn't require anyone else's downfall. You carried your experiences without bitterness. You learned from them instead of becoming hardened by them. While others stayed stuck in old emotions, you moved forward with clarity. That kind of progress unsettles people because it removes the usual story. There was no battle, no public victory, no moment where you needed to defeat someone to feel whole. As you elevated, they began to feel it. Your energy changed. Your presence became calm and grounded. You didn't walk into rooms trying to impress anyone. You didn't carry resentment in your voice or posture. That peace spoke louder than any argument ever could. What truly terrified them was what your rise revealed. It proved that your strength didn't come from opposition. You didn't borrow power from conflict or validation. You built it quietly, through self-work, patience, and discipline. That kind of power can't be taken away because it wasn't given by anyone in the first place. Your elevation also became a mirror. Without saying a word, you reflected back what was possible and what was ignored. Some people realized they spent too much time holding on to resentment instead of growing. Others saw chances they didn't take, and that realization hurt more than any revenge ever could. You didn't need to explain yourself. You didn't need closure from anyone. Your life became the response, and that response was steady progress, inner peace, and self-respect. When people see someone rise without bitterness, it forces them to question their own choices. Now, even your presence carries weight, not because you demand attention, but because you represent something real. You show that healing is possible. That strength doesn't need to shout, that rising above pain is more powerful than reacting to it. That's why they're terrified. Not because you destroyed anything, but because you became something they didn't expect. You rose without revenge, and in doing so, you proved that your power was always yours to build. Chosen one, this wasn't about proving anything. It was about becoming aligned. Stay grounded, stay focused, and remember, when people grow afraid without you doing anything, it means you're exactly where you're meant to be.